Thank you very much. Welcome, and I'm actually very grateful to be here. I've wanted to attend one of these conferences for a while, so I'm super cool that it's in South Africa. Just a disclaimer right at the beginning, this is probably the most technologically advanced study that I've ever done. It included a pen, a paper, and a pair of binoculars. But the two systems that I was working on was the swart flare system and the Touw estuary system in the garden route. So that's, for those of you not from here, about halfway between here and Cape Town. They're both estuarine lake systems. They're under the management of South African national parks, but we basically only manage the water body. So the area around the estuaries is under local or district municipality control, or is privately owned. And like many other estuaries, they're development areas. So you've got the town of Sedgefield around swart flare, and then the wilderness around the bottom area around wilderness. So you get development within your estuary functional zone and in the floodplains, and because of that, it's very difficult to enable natural breaching of the estuaries to occur because you're going to flood local infrastructure. So we've got a mouth breaching protocol that has to be followed. It's primarily set to prevent flooding, but there are other provisions to prevent sort of if you've got pollution coming in at certain heights. Even if we do breach the mouth, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have floods. So in extreme weather events, you still get flooding events occurring. There's been a number in the swart flare system. This is Sedgefield, just before, sorry, sort of the same sort of areas before and after or during the flood. And if you have a number of these in a short time or space of time, it really builds into the sort of mindset of the community. So they're very interested in what's happening around mouth breaching events. And that took me by surprise when I actually started working with sand parks, and there was so much interest. You have a whole lot of people coming down. They tell you what you should and should not be doing. But there was also a lot of fishing activity around it. And it was fishing activity, either rod and reel. There was a lot of cast netting. But there was also activity which people would come and try and catch fish that were migrating out of the mouth as you're opening it in that channel with pretty much anything that they could get hands on. So you had, again, I pressed the wrong one, sorry. You've got some sort of nets over there. You've got buckets, even wash baskets, anything that could be used. So I looked at this and I thought, I actually want to better understand what this mechanical mouth breaching event does to local line fisheries. And is it a sort of a trigger point for effort? So we looked at it through 3 different time phases. The first was the immediate. So what's the immediate response in the first 12 hours from breaching? We used instantaneous effort counts. We had 4 discrete blocks of 3 hours from time of breaching, and we did a random survey in that block with a provision of at least 2 hours between surveys. And we covered 7 breachings through that method. And then we had short, so 0 to 12, what's the sort of a short-term response? Again, instantaneous effort counts. Sorry, the immediate was only in the first 500 meters of the estuary. The short was throughout that estuary up into the lake system. Random start times, we had unequal effort because we never knew exactly when the mouth was going to be breached. So you could watch what the water level is doing, but you never knew when the park was actually going to breach it. And the park staff were often under severe pressure at that time, so they didn't always let us know when the breaching was going to be happening. So we had unequal effort before, but then we would sample daily for 12 days afterwards. Again, random start times. And then we had long-term between phases where we had instantaneous effort counts. This was through a citizen science project, so honorary rangers were helping us. We had random start times and random days, but the interest actually got so great amongst the honorary rangers that we're pretty much at the moment having daily angler counts happening. And then we were monitoring the Touw estuary system for a 2-year period at the same time. It had a system that hadn't been monitored before, slightly different. We were doing roving creel surveys, but it was a progressive count. So as we were moving through the fishery, we were interviewing and counting as well. So what did we get? We used Friedman's rank test and Wilcoxon's test to see if there was a difference over those time periods for the short term, for the immediate term. And actually, it wasn't what I wanted to show. So we didn't find a statistically significant trend of an increasing fishing pressure in the immediate term. But there's more to the story there. So what we did see was huge variability between breaching events. And if you think about it, we never knew when the mouth was going to be breached, and the breaching was occurring probably often because of heavy weather coming in. So you could breach at 3 o'clock in the morning. 3 o'clock in the morning, you're going to have a very different response rate as to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The other thing that happened, and it was fortuitous in a way, and it was actually good in a way, and I think what we're actually showing here is a management outcome. Because we had been speaking to park management for a while, how do we deal with what's been quite an entrenched behavior activity over a long time? How do we start to engage with that? Because it's probably not a sustainable practice, what we were seeing. And at the time when we decided to monitor it, we had a new section ranger who came in who was very on the ball and had said, right, from this time, this breaching, we're going to put rangers on the ground for 8 to 12 hours after breaching to try and limit that effect. So I think what we're partly showing here is actually an impact of a positive impact from a management action. But when it came to that short term, so the first 12 days post-breaching, there was a very strong trend. So here with our modeling, we showed that the effect of day type, so weekends obviously you had increased fishing pressure, and then the mouth state had a strong determinant factor on fishing pressure. This is leading up to the mouth breaching event, day 0. We had, like I mentioned earlier, we had unequal effort sampling because we didn't know when day 0 would be. But you can see that the counts, this is a 95% confidence interval, was pretty steady leading up to it, and then you had a rapid increase in fishing pressure post that. For the first 3 to 5 days, we were seeing about a 10% increase in fishing pressure for those first 5 days, and then it tallied off, or stabilized and dropped slightly, and then stabilized again. So a very strong response to the mouth breaching event. And then when it came to the longer term study, this is that the citizen science project. Again here with our modeling, we showed that, so we had the factors of season, day type, time of day in the model, and there was something else, season, day type, mouth state, and time of day, yeah. So the weekend days again came out as strong predictors for increased fishing pressure. Mouth state, open, strong predictor for increased fishing pressure. Time of day, so increased fishing pressure in the afternoon. And then there was also a seasonal trend, which we would expect in most of these fisheries over the summer season. You have a whole lot of people moving into the area for those holidays, and we saw increased fishing pressure over the summer season. What we also, because we were having really cool almost daily effort, what we found was every now and again you would have counts where you would have exceptionally high fishing pressure. So your average would be sort of 25 anglers per day, and then for some reason, and I can't explain what it is, you would have a day when you'd have 95 anglers on the same system. And that occurred over both week and weekend days. So the second highest count that we've actually got was on a weekday. So that just looked at effort on one system, but what were we getting in another system in the Touw estuary? So this was the standard roving creel surveys, and we modeled through a generalized mixed effects model to see what was happening with effort. And again, similar to the swat flare system, we showed that there was a strong seasonal effect, there was a strong mouth state effect, and there was a strong weekday or week type effect. So again, fishing pressure increased on your weekends. Fishing pressure was not during summer, but in autumn we had the highest fishing pressure. And what happens generally in autumn? You got Easter, and we love eating fish over Easter. So that was a strong push for fishing pressure on this system. We also showed that there was fishing pressure was higher on the weekdays than the weekend days. What I should have mentioned earlier is this is a mixed fishery. So it's not just recreational fishing, it's recreational and livelihood fishing. But if you're doing counts, I can't describe who a person is. So I've just lumped them all together. Even when we were doing the interviews, it became very hard to actually determine or to say it's not black and white. It's not I am a recreational, I am a subsistence. There's a very nebulous gray area between that. So we just included all the anglers together. But in the open state, you had an increased fishing pressure and decreased weekend fishing pressure. When I looked at why do we have decreased fishing pressure over the weekends, it was because you get paid access. So some of those areas there are gate guards on duty over the weekends only. So weekdays people can enter and go fishing. Weekends it's closed access, you have to pay. So that had an influence over the fishing pressure. Then we ran a multinomial regression model on what was being targeted, and here we saw a surprising response. So during the closed phase, the majority of your anglers were targeting an alien invasive freshwater species, the Mozambique tilapia, Orychromis mozambicus. And far fewer anglers were targeting the estuarine-dependent marine species, your white steenbras, Cape stumpnose, spotted grunter. In the open phase, that shifted, changed around. So you had more anglers targeting your white steenbras, which is listed as endangered on the IUCN Red Data list. An increase in people targeting Cape stumpnose, so there was a significant increase there. We didn't find an increase or change in anglers that were targeting spotted grunter or leofis, which was a bit surprising. And obviously, if you're going to have a change in your target species, then you're going to expect to have a change in your catch composition. But I didn't expect to see quite such a change either. So in the open phase, 50% of the catch was made up of white steenbras. 34% was made up of Cape stumpnose, although only actively targeted 2% of the time. And your Orychromis only made up 10%. And then in your closed phase, your Orychromis made up 85% of your catch. So a huge shift in the target and a huge shift in your catch composition. What I haven't shown here, there was also a significant difference in where people were fishing. So if the mouth was open, there was a lot more fishing pressure towards the lower sections of the estuary. And in that first island lake, or the Touw estuary, in the closed phase, the fishing effort actually shifted into the interconnecting channels. Cool. This is my last slide. So in summary, we looked at it over 3 time periods, your immediate, your short-term, and your long-term. Pattern, we had high variability between events, but there was a strong influence in the short-term of mouth states and day type, and a strong influence in the long-term, which we actually sort of expected. Implications and actions. So I think we should see these as predictable triggers for increased fishing pressure, and our management actions should extend beyond those first 12 hours to at least 3 to 5 days post the breaching event. And then obviously we can use the trends that we're seeing to improve our efficiency and our management actions over the long time, which we are already doing, but we can still be improved. But I think more importantly, we should consider an amendment to the Marine Living Resources Act, where we prohibit cast netting and perhaps fishing in the lower sections of those estuary in at least those 3 to 5 days to enable those fish to move in and out of that estuary over a critical key period of time. Thank you.